Parashas Shemini, Shabbos, Parashas Parah, Tafshin Ayin Tes. As we move right along, next week, Amir Tashem will already be Parashas HaChodesh. Rosh Chodesh Nisan is on Shabbos. So we have a couple of more weeks before Pesach. I don't mean to alarm anybody or scare anybody that has to prepare for Pesach, but it's really right around the corner. 3 weeks from tonight will already be B'dikas Chometz. So let's try to get in as much as we can from Parashas Shemini. And one of the parts of this week's Parsha discusses what happened with Nadav v'Avihu. And really, it is a very, very perplexing episode indeed. What happened with Nadav and Avihu in our Parsha? And it's so difficult to actually understand what the pigam actually was. What was it that Nadav and Avihu actually did? And Chazal tell us in many ways how great Nadav and Avihu actually were. And you might make the mistake because you think they did something wrong in this week's Parsha. Nadav and Avihu were the greatest people in Klal Yisrael. And the Medrash tells us that even no one less than Moshe Rabbeinu himself said that the Mishkan would be consecrated with Nadav and Avihu. You know why? Because they were greater than Moshe and Aaron. It's a Medrash. So Nadav and Avihu were tremendously great people. And the Nesivos Shalom tells us that as difficult as this episode is to understand and explain, the Torah tells us everything for a reason. And it can be very difficult and hard to wrap your brain around what exactly transpired here. But the Torah tells us everything for a reason, and we must learn something for ourselves out of what happened with Nadav and Avihu. And the Torah tells us really what happened. The Pasuk tells us, Vayakrivu Lifnei Hashem Eish Zora, Asher lo tzivo Hashem, Asher lo tzivo Isa. What happened here, Pasuk Pshat, the Pasuk tells us that they brought a fire down to the Mishkan and they weren't commanded to do it. And the Torah tells us that that was a very, very big problem. But Chazal though enumerate many other reasons why Nadav and Avihu got punished. And I'll just let you know some of these reasons. Some of these reasons that Chazal tell us were, it could be that they were Shisuye Yayin, which means that they had drank wine and they couldn't come in and do Avodah after they had wine. Whether they were Mechusrei Begodim, they weren't wearing the proper amount of clothing, the proper amount of Begodim that one would be required to wear for the Avodah. Or that they went into the Mishkan without Rechitzas Yadayim V'Raglayim, that you have to, there's a chiyuv to wash your hands and your feet before you go in. Chazal say that could have been a problem. Maybe they didn't do that. Or maybe because they did not have children, or because they weren't married. Chazal tell us so many different reasons why this could have happened. And the Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin, Daf Nun Beis Amud Aleph, tells us that Nadav and Avihu would go around saying something unbelievable. They would go around and say that they're waiting for the day for Moshe and Aaron to pass on, that they could take over. Now at face value that seems unbelievable, that people should talk about Moshe and Aaron like that. But the Gemara tells us that's what Nadav and Avihu would do. They'd say, Mosai Yom, when would Moshe and Aaron pass on, and that they could take their rightful place as the leaders of Klal Yisrael. And so, of course, that the Gemara said, that was a problem with Nadav and Avihu. And they also, the Gemara tells us that they ruled the halacha in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. So we see so many different reasons in Chazal. So the first question we need to ask is why Chazal have to tell us any of these reasons? I just told you, what was it, 7, 8, 9 different reasons why Nadav and Avihu could have gotten punished. Why did Chazal mention any of these at all if the Torah explicitly tells us that they brought an Eish Zara. The reason they got punished is because they brought a fire to the Mishkan. They brought a fire that was an Eish Zara. It wasn't supposed to be brought by them. And why are we looking for other problems? Why are we looking for other issues? The Torah already tells us what the problem was. And as a side point, the tzivui, as we know, was that you could actually bring an eish from a hedyot. It didn't have to be from a special person. The eish of the Mishkan, the eish that was brought down to the Mizbeach, could have been an eish from a hedyot, from a regular person. So why are we getting so caught up? And who it was that brought this eish zara? What was the problem then? Okay, so really on that question, the Dasikain Mibalei HaTosfos answers, and he says, Eina Chanami, that the eish of the Mizbeach could have been brought by a hedyot, but the mitzvah to bring it from a hedyot was only after the eish had already come min hashamayim. In other words, a person could bring it. Any person, a person could have brought it. But that's only after the original eish would have come down from Shemayim, and then after that it could be had. And that's Das Ken Bali HaTosfos. He gives a teretz on that question. So it really was considered an eish zara according to the Das Kenim, because it had not come down from Shemayim yet. So if we are saying that they did a chet in some way, that Nadav and Avihu did a chet, how is it that they would be considered greater than Moshe and Aaron? We took that as a fact, that Nadav and Avihu was so great, but now the only thing we're arguing about here is which one of the 7, 8, or 9 reasons that we said was the problem. But if they did a chet, how could they have been better than Moshe and Aaron? So Nesivos Shalom tells us, and he says that of course, when we speak about Nadav and Avihu, we need to speak about them with the greatest reverence. We have to understand who Nadav and Avihu were. And yet we're saying that Nadav and Avihu went ahead and they said, when are Moshe and Aaron going to die that I could take over? Something doesn't jive over here. Something doesn't really make sense. So Nesivos Shalom answers this with a very, very important yesod. And he says like this, that the purpose of the entire Torah and mitzvahs really revolve around one goal, one thing, and that is the mitzvah of Uvoi Sidbak. All 613 mitzvahs, and Nesivos Shalom says this many times, all 613 mitzvahs are 613 different ways to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To be Mekayim, that mitzvah of Uvoi Sidbak, to cleave to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yet, we need to ask the question, how is it possible to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? We know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like an eish, the Shechina is like fire, and yet we're supposed to take 613 different ways to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The answer, says in Nesivos Shalom, is that you know how a person gets close to the Shekhinah? Of course we can't step up to the Shekhinah. We'd be burnt alive right away. The way to get close to the Shekhinah is to attach yourself to Talmidei Chachamim. Attach yourself to Talmidei Chachamim and their Talmidim. And that is how we establish our link, our chain to the Shekhinah. And the Saba Kadisha from Slonim brought down in the Nesivos Shalom, he says that such is the case, and this is an important lesson, the case that we need to attach ourselves to Talmidei Chachamim is even if the Mekabel is greater than the Mashpia. Even if you know, and even if you feel that at some point in your life you overtook your Rebbe, you got in the left lane, you learned more, you studied more, you davened more, whatever you became greater than your Rebbe, you still have an obligation to attach yourself to a Rebbe. It's even if the Mekabel is greater than the Mashpia, because the Dvar Hashem has to be passed down. The Dvar Hashem goes from Moshe Rabbeinu to his Talmidim through a Rebbe and down to you. And we see it was first given to the Nevi'im, and after the Nevi'im it was given to Ruach HaKodesh, and after that to the Chachamim of every single door. And every Yid needs to subordinate himself to that, to understand that the way we get close to the Shekhinah, the way that we are Mekabel the Torah, is to take it through a Rebbe. When you connect yourself to that, you connect yourself to the Messiah of Har Sinai, to the Messiah of your Rebbe. When you connect yourself to that, you are connecting to the Shekhinah. You're connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So yes, says the Nesivos Shalom, Nadav and Avihu could have been greater. They were bigger than Moshe and Aaron. They were at an unbelievably high level. But they had that problem. Nadav and Avihu needed to respect the Rebbe even though they may have been greater, because the only way to connect to Hashem is through the Rebbe. And they weren't doing that through Moshe Rabbeinu. And when they were lacking that, they weren't connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When they were wrong about that, all these tirutzim that we gave of what the problem was with Nadav and Avihu, there was one underlying thing, that they weren't asking Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't go through Moshe Rabbeinu. They were waiting to take over because they thought they were greater. But they missed the point that even if you are greater, you have to go through a Rebbe. And that is the way it works. That is how it's handed down, the Messiah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Moshe Rabbeinu, to his Talmud, and to his Talmud, and to the Talmud after that. And therefore, if you're not connected to the Shekhinah, it's an Eish Zara. No matter what you do, whether the problem was problem 1, 2, 3, 4, or 9, and I don't exactly know how many we said, but we said something around that. No matter what the problem was, if you didn't connect through your Rebbe, then it's an Eish Zara. And the Torah tells us Eish Zara, and it includes all the reasons that Chazal say. We wanted to know, why are Chazal bringing down other reasons? It all goes back to the same thing. It all goes back to the reason of not connecting through your Rebbe. And this is an extremely, extremely important lesson for every single one of us to know. That sometimes we feel, and people do feel sometimes, what am I listening to my Rebbe for? I know more than him. Most of the time, let's be honest, most of the time you probably don't. There's a lot of gaiva involved in that, but we're not getting into the Musar Shabbai right now. What we're saying is that there is an inherent problem when you're not Makabel from a Rebbe. When you don't have a Rebbe that you ask an Eitzah. You don't have a Rebbe that you implicitly and totally agree to ask. That is aside from gaining knowledge and aside from having an actual Rebbe that's going to teach you Torah, but you need a Rebbe that you're Makabel. And that's our way of getting close to the Shekhinah. And that's the mistake that Nadav and Avihu made. And however we look at it, whatever the actual physical, logistical problem was that they did, but it all boiled down, Eish Zara. They didn't connect to the Rebbe. And that's a lesson of this week's Parsha. The lesson of this week's Parsha from Nadav and Avihu is that you need to be Makabel. In order to connect to the Shekhinah, you need to be Makabel from your Rebbe.